Hi. If we're thinking about data mining and chemical informatics, the first place we need to start is what sort of data might we be analysing. Now, you may have access already to some experimental data that you'd like to data mine. If, however, you don't, then there are publicly available resources that you can access to try asking scientific questions about. Okay, and over the next 5 minutes or so, I'm just going to introduce you to a few of the most important ones, I think. So the first thing I'm going to do is point you towards Wikipedia, because they have a list of chemical databases. Okay, as far as I can tell, it's fairly comprehensive. It covers everything from crystal structure information, analytical data, reactivity information, and the like, across multiple disciplines, where you're talking food chemistry, the environment, drug discovery. Okay, so there's a huge range of databases in here. Now, some of these are publicly available, and some of these are available only by subscription. Okay, so I think if for a first point of investigation, I'm going to point you towards Wikipedia. Okay, so the next one I'm going to say is, chemists are interested in molecules, and one of the largest molecular resources that we have access to is ChemSpider from the Royal Society of Chemistry. This is an online database that you can access programmatically if you wanted to, which contains molecular information, physical chemical data, links to literature references, links to spectra, and the like. So if I come along and I, for instance, search for aspirin here, it's a fairly generic molecule that everybody's familiar with. We can see the sorts of information that we have access to. We can see, for instance, different names that it's available under. We can see its physical chemical properties and biological properties. We can, for instance, access spectral information, so NMR, UV, mass spec. We could even consider where could we buy this from. Okay, so this is an incredibly useful resource. Okay, that's publicly available. The next one that I'm going to talk to you about is structural information. So many of you will be familiar with the Cambridge crystallographic database. Okay, here again I've just performed search for aspirin again. We can have a look at the molecule itself. You can get the crystallographic information, so space group and unit cell and the like. Okay, you might be thinking about measuring, for instance, distances within molecules. You might be thinking about trying to look at 3D conformation and the like. So in those kinds of questions, this is a fantastic resource. Many chemists are interested in chemical reactivity. Okay, and unfortunately, chemical reactivity is something that publicly available data is very limited for. The biggest and most useful actually comes from this publication, where they've data mined chemical reactions from the US patent literature. Okay, so it's got about 40 years worth of patent literature that has been extracted computationally and made publicly available. Okay, this is currently hosted on Figshare, which is a website that shares publication data, and you can come along and you can download this reaction information. Okay, it's by text mining, and that means that, for instance, the data that's available varies based on what the publication contains. So if it contained melting point information, then this will have melting point information. If it contained yield, then it will contain that, but it may not have. Okay, so you have to have that little caveat in there that this isn't a complete data set per se. If you're interested more in structural biology, crystallography, NMR, for instance, then the Protein Data Bank, I'm sure you're already familiar with, is a fantastic resource for studying those structural information. Okay, so you can, for instance, download specific proteins that you might be interested in, or specific ligands that you might be interested in, or you can do a more comprehensive analysis where you download perhaps the whole of known crystal structures to do a global analysis of whatever you were interested in. Natural products are amongst the most important for historic reasons and for drug discovery reasons in chemistry. Okay, they've made fantastic targets for synthetic chemistry, and also understanding their biology is really important. There are a number of natural products type databases available to you. This is a Natural Products Atlas, where they've tried to provide open access to a wide range of bacterial and fungal natural products research, okay, and to try to allow researchers to explore that chemical diversity. Obviously, natural products are just a small part of chemical space. Okay, the other one that's of big interest is stuff that we can buy and synthesize. Okay, and this website is Zinc. Okay, Zinc is not commercial. It's the name, and it's a free database of all commercially available compounds. Now, you can use this for whatever you might want. It was originally set up for doing docking for drug discovery, but you could, for instance, download the Sigma Aldrich catalog from here, or another supplier of your interest. Okay, so you can access three-dimensional structures. These are a large part calculated three-dimensional structures rather than the crystallographic data that we saw earlier on. Okay, you can get simple 2D structures. You can then use that for whatever chemical informatics application. I know many chemists are interested in the applications of lipids, whether those are for biomedical research or for environmental research. Okay, the Swiss Lipids database is a great resource for finding literature and structural information on lipids and their biology and uses. Okay, so Swiss Lipids is there. If your interests lie more towards the biochemical, biomedical applications in chemistry, so drug discovery, medicinal chemistry, that like, okay, Campbell is the go-to website for that. So Campbell, for instance, will allow us to, and if we just use our aspirin example again, we can come along and we can access compounds, information on, for instance, aspirin. Here we can get links to where it's been used in biological assays. We can see what it's the range of bioactivities it might have. Okay, so you might be thinking of an experiment such as quantitative structure activity relationships. You might be thinking about something like drug repurposing or anything like that. So it's a fantastic resource for those types of things. The next two I'm going to cover are both PubChem and its related one, PubMed. Okay, so PubMed and PubChem are both from the National Library of Medicine in the US, and they allow you to publicly access chemical and biochemical data, or in the case of PubMed, literature information that you can freely download. Okay, so you might, for instance, consider a text mining experiment where you're mining the text literature for, let's say you're interested in chemical education. You might, for instance, come along and say you're interested in feedback in education, for instance. You could then obtain the literature, or at least the references or the abstracts, and do some sort of text mining on that, for instance. PubChem, likewise, very similarly to ChemSpider, we can come along and we can access, for instance, structural information, spectral information, links to biochemical data, and the like. Okay. If you're more analytically orientated, then you might be, for instance, interested in NMR data specifically. So NMR Shift DB is a publicly available database of NMR data. You could also use it to do things like predict NMR spectra or help you assign NMR spectra. Okay, so this is a great resource for that. If you're interested more in things like mass spectrometry or complex sample analysis and metabolomics, then websites like GNPS, so the Global Natural Product Social Networking website, or Metabolites for looking at human metabolomics experiments, are great resources. So GNPS will make publicly available data on both natural product extracts, so for instance LCMS data of some extracted fungi that you might want to look at, whereas Metabolites is focused on human biology principally, and it is cross-species, but the species are typically mammalian, used in medical experiments. So the range is less diverse than you might find with GNPS. Okay, but so we've seen how we can access a wide range of chemical information across multiple different databases. You could, for instance, consider blending these methods together. For instance, you could think about can we pair up the data from Cambridge crystallographic database? Can we look at that and look at molecules where the NMR data's known, and what inferences could we learn from that? So don't look at these sets of data necessarily in isolation. Okay? Thank you very much.